Good morning, grinders. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka BlenderHD, BlenderHD. You're gonna follow me on Twitter, and it's Thursday, March 28th, opening day, MLB. Yay! It's finally here. So I'm joined with Derek CARTY, purveyor of the Batx. The bat. When you have the X there, that absolutely means it has to be the best.
That's how you know it's for real.
That's when you know it's for real. That's right. Well, hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Right. I like those thumbs. Hit the thumbs up button. Hit the notification bell. Hit everything. Just hit everything. Celebrate. It's MLB opening day, where it's unlike NBA. Most of the time, the pitchers that are supposed to pitch, and the batters that are supposed to bat. So it's don't have to sit in front of your computer most of the time. Some days we may have like late lineups or something like that. You may have to switch some stuff around, but today you don't. I think all the games start at the same. All the games on the DraftKings slate start at the same time. I think FanDuel there's some broken up ones. We have 2 rainouts that were postponed, but that's a little bit early. But yeah, it's nice, Derek, to, opening day, bring you on. I'm going to be on Grinders Live later today, in the afternoon. It must be hectic for you, especially today. That you're going on a media tour of here's the bat and here's what the bat likes, and you can get all that bat stuff here at RotoGrinders.
Yeah, it's today's always a super busy day. I get lots of questions from people, and I answer every single question, DM everything I get. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, doing a lot of customer service, making sure everything's running smoothly, doing shows. It's a fun day, but it's a hectic one. You will maybe hear my phone in the background. I'm keeping the sound on just because if stuff comes in, I need to hear it just in case there's any issues or anything.
Well, there's also a Discord channel. If you have a bat subscription, you have access to the bat channel in our RotoGrinders Discord. There's a paid channel, and that's pretty much where you hang out. And the number one question I know in the bat Discord, if you do a search, is the loop on?
The loop is on.
The loop is on. And finally, first day, the loop is on. Obviously, if you don't know, the Batx projections are integrated into Lineup HQ here at RotoGrinders. We could throw that up on the screen if Steve can do that right now. So if you have a bat subscription, you could get all of Derek CARTY's projections, including ownership projections, and they are updated. So CARTY, during what's the update schedule? When it's closer to lock, the bat updates every 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5-minute loop.
And then during the day, for people, especially if they're betting on props, right, or they're working throughout the day, it updates on what, half an hour interval?
No, throughout the whole day, it's 5
minutes. Every 5 minutes, no matter what.
Yep, no matter what.
And why is that important? Why is getting a lot of times 2:00 in the afternoon, 2:00 to 2:05, it'll update, but really nothing will change, right?
Right.
Obviously, as starting lineups come in for batters, right, we have projected orders in, right? You could always go to we have all these bat pages here on RotoGrinders, like the standard projections page. You could go to the hitters page. It'll always show you if it's in the lineup with this little checkbox. So you could always double check. You obviously, if you have a bat subscription, you could download all of these projections and download everything via CSV. These are obviously mean projections, just to be aware. They're made for DFS. So you could do with it whatever you want. So if you have another optimizer that you're using, if you have your own stuff, you're doing stuff in Excel, Python, R, whatever you're doing, you can always get the bat projections just downloading them here. But they're integrated into everything here at RotoGrinders. When they're updated every 5 minutes, that helps, obviously, later in the day with batting order changes.
Yep.
Weather changes, umpire assignments. Now, truthfully, since I consider myself a bad expert because I've been using, CARTY. I've been using your stuff for I don't know 5 years, 6, uh, and use it for props and pick'em, and being very successful with that. Uh, a lot of times, small minor batting order changes, like for a DFS perspective, aren't going to change that much, right?
Not usually, yeah. I mean, if a guy's projected to hit ninth and he's hitting leadoff today and he's super cheap, like maybe, for DFS, maybe that matters. But a lot of times it's smaller stuff that, isn't going to impact things too drastically.
What I want to ask you about, though, Cardi, is that something more in the morning. Now, one of the unsung heroes of the bat is I don't have it up now because there's nothing there now. There's actually a broken link. You probably could check on
Yeah,
that for the
I know
RG
we're
Tech
aware of
team.
that, yeah.
Called the Tomorrow Projections, where you run tomorrow's stuff like later today, and that's especially helpful with overnight lines, the early boards on Prize Picks and Underdog and sites like that. But there is a difference between what tomorrow's projections are generated as and what today's projections end up being. Can you explain kind of the process timeline? Like, do you just wake up and you look and you go, "Oh, that looks wrong. Let me fix that," type of thing? Because it's kind of an automated process.
Yeah, so the tomorrow projections are an automated process. They run a couple times a day, one in the morning, one at night. So you can get a look ahead for the next day. Obviously, the closer you get to game time, the more information you have and the more accurate the projections are going to become. The day before, it doesn't have. So the day of, it uses RotoGrinders projected lineups. You go to the lineups page on RotoGrinders. Those are the ones the bat is using. The day before, because RotoGrinders doesn't have them yet, the bat is using, I believe it's the last lineup the team used against that handedness of pitcher or something like that. So that can change a little bit overnight. And then the big thing is pitch counts as well. The first thing every morning, I'll go in, I'll look at projected pitch counts for every pitcher, and I'll see, okay, did the automation get this right? There's a super, super fancy automated pitch count formula thing that the bat uses. Gets it right about 95% of the time. Occasionally, there are things that it doesn't know. This guy has been injured for the last 2 months, didn't make a rehab start. So the automation thinks, well, he's not going to be able to throw more than like 50 pitches. But he threw a simulated game on a backfield that if you find a beat report, he actually threw 75 and he might be able to go 90 today. That requires a manual input just because that kind of data is just not in any data feed. So I'll go through, I'll manually check all that stuff. I'll make sure everything looks good. And then after that, projections tend to be, pretty stable.
Right. And then you could basically use, we have all the data here, all the standard projections. We got, obviously for DFS, we got the stack projections page, which is helpful to, target stacks that, project well for their price, for their ceiling. You could just, manually do it there. Obviously, anything that shows in the stack projections as like a quality point per dollar stack, if you go into lineup HQ and you run like 300 lineups, with some stack configuration, you'll end up seeing all of that. If I ran 300 lineups with like 5x, right, I'm probably today going to get a bunch of the Reds, a lot of the Reds Nationals game today. Obviously, the Dodgers have a high ceiling. I mean, almost every day you're probably going to see the Dodgers as very expensive but high ceiling. If you can fit them in your lineup, go get them. But I think that the understanding the schedule, this is one thing because people ask me about the bat projections often. I consider myself one of your best salespeople. Okay, even though it is not in my best interest to sell the bat. It is not. I'm putting my stamp down. Carty, you know this. I want the bat to be I want the bat to be way expensive.
Yeah, right? Every year you tell me you want to make the bat $5,000 or something, and I mean, you're right. It would be worth that. And there would be plenty of people who would buy it. I try to keep it more accessible. I know, I mean, I get every year, I get users telling me, raise the price, which is it's just wild to have
or keep the price low for just the fantasy point projections. But the statistical projections, you charge more. And I'm giving this is every
That's
this
a
is
good
this is
idea.
an annual tradition, Derek. You know that at the first time you come on MLB on RotoGrinders, it's going to be half the show is me coming up with schemes on how to make you more money, and then keep the amount of people that allow me to make money.
Yeah, it's true.
Because I think for the DFS purposes, it's like, okay, fine. Charge a little for the fantasy point projection. I mean, that you're not getting much. There's really no sites other than PrizePicks and Underdog that do fantasy point props. But all the other props, I mean, one of the biggest tips I could give you, I'm laying it all out there. Those tomorrow projections and overnights, and then in the morning, it said the key is to you should be able. I know, Carty, you go on other shows in the morning a lot of times, and you give out you got your 3 locks of the day, right? It's sports betting, right? You got to call everything a lock, a
I do not
play,
call it a lock. We deal
a
with
gold star,
probability.
whatever. What do you call them? I mean, you're going on. This is what the bat likes, right? Almost all the time. Whatever you do on your shows, you're like, oh, this guy's strikeout unders. Oh, this guy's pitching out overs. Like I've already gotten that like hours before you're on the show. Why? Because obviously you're looking at your own projections and seeing what the edge differences are between the lines that are on the sports books. I'm just seeing that before you publicly go on for the lazy people that don't want to actually look at the line. I mean, it really just comes down to that a lot of times with the bad projections in betting, you're going to get CLV because 2 reasons. One, the bad projections are the best in the industry. And number 2, typically the lines move in your favor. So to get the most amount of value is to bet them as early as you can before your schmucky face goes on and tells everyone about it, and then the number moves and the value is gone. So I know the first portion of the show, I'm just showing the benefits of the bat projections, but I think it's on opening day today. This is a daily sport. So like it's not like the Blitz, right? Which is another great NFL projection set that you make. Like the Blitz is like what 18 weeks plus playoffs and whatever. How many slates is that? How many days is that? Baseball, it's going to be now until God knows when, October. Every single day, you're waking up in the morning, doing those manual adjustments. You're running the automation, perfecting the models. That there's no better time to get in now. Get the bat projections. Use them for DFS. Use them for betting, props, and pick 'em. Because every day you go without them, it's just one. You're paying an opportunity cost.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. GR Sauceda asks, if I purchased the Batx through RG, can I import the unabated or Fangraphs, for example? I mean, you could download the CSV. I mean, I'm assuming, Carty, you've gotten asked questions of tons of times of, does the bat projections work with something that's maybe not RotoGrinders related?
Yeah. So Fangraphs only does season-long projections. The bat is already over there. It's free for season-long. Unabated is for sports betting. You can download the CSV. You can import it into unabated, I think, and that will work. If you have the bat at EV Analytics, it will automatically import into unabated as well.
It will import 92% of the projections. I just want to be. I always want to be transparent. It will import about 92% of the projections.
There is an issue that they're aware of with some guys not importing.
Right. It's apparently they don't like anyone of Latino descent. So
I don't think that's the reason. I don't.
Yeah, I know that's not the reason. I know it's the funny characters.
There's issues when there's like an accent over a character's or over a character in a guy's name right now. So
Right. I just want to make it sound worse than it was. It's like, what do you mean it? What do you mean it? That like anyone that's Dominican, it just doesn't accept. It's like, no, Jesus Luzardo has, that the little character above the U, and importing stuff doesn't necessarily. I mean, you could manually put it in. I mean, you could name match yourself in Excel, but I mean, it's obviously you have to hack some stuff together. But EV Analytics, if you get the bat there, the thing is that if you get the bat at EV Analytics, you can't download anything. It integrates into a site like Unabated, but you don't get the DFS projections. You don't get that's not going to get you anything in lineup HQ. Me personally, personally, I have both because business expense. Check that off. But I think getting it at RotoGrind, there's so much more options that you could just download the CSV, do whatever the hell you want with it.
Yeah.
The URLs typically stay the same. So even if you're running some type of process in Excel to kind of grab them, if you know what you're doing in Excel, getting it from the RG pages actually works very well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that people are pulling scraping your stuff into Excel.
Yeah, I know they're doing that. It's, we make the CSVs accessible so people can do that and do whatever fancy stuff they want to do with them.
Okay, so you want to talk about today's games? I mean,
I mean, we probably should. This is called RotoGrinders Today, right? It is opening day.
You're right. It is. You're actually right. Right. I'm just here for Carty's Joey Callow takes. Someone is in chat. Okay. Because I'm going to be on Grinders Live later with Dean. So it feels like I'm going to be talking about the slate then. What are we going to talk about now? I have a question about pitching. And it's not just this is a today thing, but it's still a macro thing. The first month of the season, how variant are these pitch counts going to be? Where, depending on their spring training load, I mean, I can't see any pitcher pitching 100 pitches today. I mean,
no, I think the bat thinks there's a couple that are capable of it and none that actually will. Technically, Brian Bello and Cole Reagans theoretically could throw over 100. Probably not going to happen.
And how long? I mean, are we going to get certain? I know these pitch counts are all these are median pitch counts. So it's not like Jesus Luzardo at 90. It's like, is he going to pitch 90? Well, he may pitch 84. He may pitch 96. He may it's going to be somewhere in that range, and that's where everything is projected from. Do you think that some of these may be more variant because you may have Jose Berrios, perfect examples, take someone like Tariq Skubal or even Glasnow for the Dodgers now. Isn't it quite possible that if he gets through 5 innings in 78 pitches that they just pull him? I mean, Tariq Skubal coming off of an injury that maybe next thing you know, he pitches 4 innings. And he comes out at 62 pitches because they just we didn't know this beforehand, but they're yeah, just get through 4 innings and we're good. No matter what your pitch count is. Is there more variance in those pitcher outcomes? Because it's not the same as July, where we kind of know how everyone uses their pitching staff and how long the leashes are on these guys.
Yeah, opening day has more uncertainty than any other day of the season. We don't know what lineups are going to look like necessarily. We don't know how deep pitchers are going to be allowed to go. Even guys that have been built up far in spring training, a guy like Reagans or Bello, who they were, I think their last spring starts, they threw 94 pitches or something like that each. They still could just get pulled. It's the first start. Managers pulls them after 5 innings because that's just what they do, and that's how it works. The other issue here too is, the bat does project pitch count. It obviously is projecting a lot fewer for the first game than it will later on. It looks at historical trends for that and has a whole algorithm to figure all that out. I'll do the manual thing where I'll look at spring training pitch counts and alter projections based on that. The problem is, the spring training pitch count data feed is actually quite bad. A lot of times we don't actually get real spring training pitch counts from the data feed. It's just recorded wrong because these are minor league parks that don't have it right. And so you have to go looking for beat reports, or you have to try to find video of it to see, okay, this guy threw this many actual pitches. I was able to find stuff for about 75% of the pitchers today. There's a few that I didn't. And so it's kind of just based on the automation. And that's the best we can do because, that's just the nature of the beast.
So today, I mean, it seems like, I mean, we got Jesus Luzardo at 7,600 against the Pirates on DraftKings. Glasnow and Skubal, I mean, are the two more expensive pitchers at 9K. There's a slate where, I mean, unless you're like full stacking the Dodgers, you can afford any pitcher you want kind of on this slate. Skubal against the White Sox, Glasnow against the Cardinals. These are all good matchups, high strikeouts. Another thing early in the year, because it's not just a pitching thing, but a hitting thing as well. The differences between ballpark conditions.
Yeah.
Early in the season versus in the summer, in more of the summer months. Like my natural inclination, like before I even looked at this slate, like projection wise, I would look at, okay, where are they playing? And we're going to have instances. I mean, I know like in the Midwest, I can tell you here in Louisville, like tomorrow it's going to be almost like 75 degrees. So there may be some like this next week, some more of a little bit heat wave coming through. But we see in March and April often where there's a game in Detroit and it's 48 degrees. And there's a game in Texas, but it's still only going to be like 68 degrees. And then a game played in a dome in like what would be a pitcher's park. But because it's in a dome, it's actually one of the better hitting environments because it's not it's not Fenway Park with 44 degree hot, like that type of thing here. I'm not sure on this specific slate. There's like really cold games, but early in the season, I mean, that's something that I know that the bat weighs in much more heavily than a lot of other projection systems.
Yeah. I mean, even today, there is a pretty significant gap between the coldest games and the hottest games. The hottest game is going to be in Arizona tonight, 75 degrees. And we have a couple games. The Mariners game's 49. The White Sox game is 50. Baltimore's 52. So we're talking, 20, 25 degree gap here between the hottest and the coldest, which is significant.
Right. Because even like LA, 64 degrees for LA is like, that's not like summer LA weather.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just looking through here. I mean, obviously the late games, I mean, that not on the DFS slate. But the game that stands out in the bat projections for hitters is this Nationals Reds game. The Reds currently have a higher implied team total than the Dodgers. They're facing Josiah Gray. I mean, can you make me a case on? I take a look at Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez. I take a look at the top 6 of the Dodgers lineup. Make a case for why Jonathan India, Will Benson, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Yeimer Candelario, Jake Fraley, and Ellie De La Cruz. With the exception of De La Cruz, who's 5,600, all these guys are much cheaper than the Dodgers. Why are the Reds projecting so well?
I mean, it's a good question. So earlier today, the bat didn't, but now that the official lineup's in, it has the Reds higher than the Dodgers too. That's wild. Part of it is that Josiah Gray gives up a ton of fly balls. This is the best park in baseball for home runs by a lot. This is a team that does have some power. And even though some of these names are kind of unknown names, they are decent. Probably not as good as like the people who are really into it think the Reds are going to be this year. But like India is a solid player. Encarnacion Strand is pretty good. Candelario is old and boring, but he's pretty good. Like this is a team that does have, they do have some guys. And it's really about game environment. Like the Dodgers are the Dodgers and they're fantastic. but they're facing a better pitcher in Miles Michaelis. They're in a worse park. And so yeah, it looks like the Reds are just as good or better than the Dodgers today.
Right, because I'm looking at the stacks page here on the bat, and I use the DK overview by team. You can obviously do the same on FanDuel, right? So all of this applies to FanDuel. I mean, the pricing will be different, the positional, differences are there. But after the Reds, I mean, these are the types of slates that I like, right? Where people would be like, "How do I pay up for the Dodgers?" And I'm like, I'd like to play the Nationals and the Marlins, like. Right? Like, I like playing them when obviously when they're not going to be his own, but like the Nationals have a 4.32 implied team total, which for this slate is kind of healthy because there's a lot of them in the threes, right? Or poor hitting conditions. But like the Marlins the Marlins aren't like cheap. They barely have a 4-run implied total. Mitch Keller is not like the worst or anything. He's fine to face. They're not that. I mean, do I want to pay $4,500 for Luis Arias? And then you have like Bell, Berger, Tim Anderson. You got a lot of. There's a lot of potential strikeouts here, swing and misses. And then I think the big question. I think a lot of the stack projection is going towards a bat. What I would be a bat special type of play. Avisel Garcia, and this is the benefits. These are the pros and cons of the bat, right? I think there's an example today from hitting, an example today from pitching, is that the quality of the bat a lot of times comes in to long-term baselines and not being fooled by short-term samples.
Yep.
Right? Now, sometimes long-term baselines, the guy just falls off a cliff and he's just washed. And you may not be able to know that for a little bit longer. And then there are short-term adjustments that other people make that aren't shown in the underlying metrics that you don't pick up for a while. Like Avisel Garcia, 2,600. You told me this was 5 years ago. I'd be like, well, why is he batting 8th, first of all, for the Marlins, right? And why is he 2,600? But let me tell you, is Avi Garcia washed?
I mean, it is possible that he is. It's not like the bat thinks he's the guy he was years ago. It projects him to be a well below average hitter. But his StatCast metrics were better than his surface metrics last year. And he's cheap and the matchup is okay. And if you're looking for a cheap punt guy, he has power. He's got that upside for GPPs. Like I think he's fine as like a roster filler. Or in a Marlins stack.
Right. No, I think the Marlins, I think people not going to pay up for Chisholm at 5,100. Outfield only eligible, right? I think Tim Anderson's fine. I mean, you're paying for it, but I think it'll be much lower owned than the Nationals, Reds, or the Dodgers. The question comes in is that 3 or 4 weeks from now, are we talking about Avi Garcia the same way that we talk about Rougned Odor? Where we go into the bat Discord and it's like, okay, let's Avi Garcia punt play again, right? And then people are like, I hope he's out of the lineup so they don't play. So we don't have to play him at 2,800. And then he ends up in the lineup and batting 5th. And it's like, damn, got it.
That's when I think I'm out.
Home runs, and then he doesn't do anything for 3 weeks, right? Is he that type of guy now?
I hope not. I mean, it's certainly possible. That's within the range of outcomes for Avi Garcia. Odor was a special case because he played second and he was always like 2.1K and he would hit cleanup for like the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. And it'd be like, all right, well, second base doesn't have a whole lot anyway, I guess. At least in outfield, there's going to be a lot of other options.
Is the pitcher version of this Cole Ragans?
Yeah, so Cole Ragans is the guy that I know the bat doesn't like as much as betting markets, as public perception. And I think the bat is probably wrong about him. I think the bat is too low on Cole Reagans.
So
He's a
push it
guy.
up. You don't go into you don't open up your little bat back box and take little Cole Reagans and push them up. Just little.
There's none of that in there. I don't, the bat is supposed to be an objective system. It does its own thing. I have my own analysis above and beyond that, but I'm not injecting my own kind of feel.
Well, what would be the reason, Derek, that you would think that the bat is low on Cole Reagans? Because obviously, I mean, the reason would be is that if you go back to a baseline from a year, 2 years ago, like he didn't have the strikeout rate that he had the last half of last season.
No.
And you have to determine whether or not that is a sustainable thing or not. And the bat right now thinks it's not as sustainable, but your eye test says other. What? Why would it be that, being that you're probably the most objective source there is, could look at it and go, I don't know why the bat isn't picking this up, but I get a feeling that Cole Reagan should have a higher whiff rate, a higher he has materially changed something in his pitching mechanics that makes his stats from 2 years ago irrelevant.
That's pretty much it. And I think some people are too high on Cole Reagans. They're just like only looking at the second half of last year. But I do think he is a substantially different pitcher than he was a couple years ago when he was not good. And the projection is going to be taking into the older data into account, to an extent. The more recent data does get more weight, but it doesn't get all the weight. Reagans is a guy who last year, especially after he got traded, just like completely revamped himself, changed up his arsenal. He was throwing with so much more velocity, and the bat takes that into account to an extent, but it doesn't take a guy's repertoire and stuff into account like fully yet. That's something that I've been working on for a while. Do plan to have that in there at some point early this year. But for now, I think Reagans is a guy that, flipped a switch, got better, and the bat doesn't believe that he's that much better yet because it's still kind of using the older data a little bit too much on him.
Talking a little bit more about pitching. I know, today's slate, we're primarily going to be covering on Grinders Live and Crunch Time. There's going to be an hour and a half worth of shows. It's going to be me and Dean talking about the slate. Crunch Time comes up after that. I mean, you'll have if you want DFS analysis, we got you covered on this channel like there's no tomorrow. But from a macro perspective, I think it's being CARTY, you're not on my show that often, to give the audience a key on what to look at, because people look at projection systems and go, do I want to trust a computer, right? Do I want to trust, that the guy has nice hair, but do I trust his programming, that type of stuff? One of the things that we'll see, especially early in the season, is possible velocity changes in some pitchers, and you're very steadfast on there, and rightfully so, that small sample sizes in and of themselves aren't bad. It's just that depending on what you're looking at in the small sample size, that's what's going to, if someone's past 7 at bats against a pitcher, they're 0 for 7. Like that means that pretty much means nothing, right? Yeah. But if a pitcher was normally throwing at 94 and now is throwing at 91, that's not something where it's like, oh well, I got to see a year and a half worth of data in order to dude, it's pitch velocity, it's gonna stabilize. You have to assume that
exactly.
If he normally, last year he had a 98-mile-an-hour fastball and now he can't even get it past 95. The red flag should be coming out, going the stats from last year don't go by that K rate because if he can't get up to 98, he's probably not going to be that good anymore. Can you go into some of the stuff on when small sample sizes are actually worth looking at and how the bat does weigh those types of things?
Yeah, sample size is not a static concept the way a lot of people think it is. It's like, oh, you have a sample size of 5. That's a small sample size. Well, no, it doesn't have to be. If it's, 5 at bats and you're looking at the guy's home run rate, like, yeah, that's a really small sample size. If it's 5 pitches, 5 fastballs, and the guy's velocity is way up on all of them, that's a great, not a great sample, but that's a pretty big sample size where we can probably trust that. It all depends on what you're looking at. And so, something like pitcher stuff, velocity, that stabilizes a lot quicker than even strikeout rate or walk rate or that kind of thing. So right now the bat does account for fastball velocity and fastball spin. It doesn't count for anything else on the stuff level yet. It's going to. It's coming along. It's looking great.
Stuff level? What the hell does that mean? The stuff level?
Well, yeah, like a pitcher's stuff. Like his
his curveball, his out pitches.
Yeah, his whole repertoire, all the different pitches, the movement on them, the spin, the tunneling, the late break, like all that kind of stuff is going to get in there. It's just not yet. But that kind of stuff is more stable than like your surface level stuff.
Has the pitch effects data gotten more advanced since the last time I've looked at it? Because the problem I find with the pitch effect stuff of like, well, for instance, you'll hear people say, this team is bad against curveballs. And like the term curveball or slider or cutter or something, these are all descriptive terms that someone has applied to a certain pitch that one may not be true, because like pitch effects data, like you could have the coordinates of where the ball traveled, right? This is how advanced MLB data has become. We have stuff like StatCast. We also have the same type of stuff for pitching. And also, there's a big difference between Clayton Kershaw's curveball and random average MLB pitcher's curveball. That it's like, well, this team is great at hitting curveballs, and he's facing Kershaw, who throws the nastiest curveball in the history of baseball. I think they're going to hammer him. Like, you can't really make those one-to-one things with like just descriptive conditions that are not like adjusted to the quality of the pitcher to begin with.
Yeah, and there's so many just different types of curveballs to begin with. Like, you have your Rich Hill or your Aaron Nola curveball that's like slow and loopy, and they drop it in the top of the strike zone for a called strike. And then you'll have, a harder curveball that tunnels really well inside the fastball and is like 10 miles per hour faster. And maybe you throw it low in the zone more. And like, there's so many, even just within classifications of curveball, there's just so many different ones that that kind of stuff is kind of hard to put a whole lot of stock into unless you're really digging in deep and kind of accounting for all the nuance.
Is there anything on the hitter end that is similar with the stat? Because people talk about, well, he's getting good launch angles, his barrel rate. We talk about underlying metrics. Obviously, stuff like BABIP affects both hitters and pitchers, where someone is just hitting the ball hard and just happens to be hitting it right at fielders. All of that type of stuff. I mean, to me, that I consider that to be like that's like the basic stuff that the bat takes care of, where like what we'll get questions, right? Someone on Crunch Time will have a question a week from now about some hitter that is like 1 for 27 with 4 strikeouts, and they'll go, well, he's been hitting horribly, and then you look and it's like his BABIP is like 127, and is his barrel and he already has 5 barrels on the season, and you're like, this guy's probably going to start to do really well, because he's just gotten extremely unlucky that 3 of his potential home runs, they were caught at the wall in ballparks that have long left field. I mean, like, it's that type of stuff. And people look at the results of the past 3 weeks and go, well, this guy sucks now, right? And then you also get the opposite of like, dude, this guy's on fire. And it just turns out that, yeah, he's gotten all those extra bases because he just managed to hit them in the exact spot where fielders weren't. And his 3 home runs came in games where the wind was blowing out at 20 miles an hour, and, to a short right field porch. And people will wonder, why does that guy project poorly in the bat? Like, the overall case that I'm trying to make is that you don't have to think about any of this stuff. Like, I feel confident. I take the wheel, I give it a CARTY. I'd say, here's the wheel. There you go. You convert the player names into numbers, and I don't ask any questions, but people do in the Discord, and you do answer them.
Fine, yeah. I mean, I understand if people want to understand why the projection feels a certain way about a certain player. I'm happy to answer it and explain what it's seeing.
Anything else we should know about the bat?
No, I mean, you talked about barrels and exit velocity and sprint speed, and the Batx does account for all that kind of stuff. They're not quite as stable as like pitcher velocity is. They're a little more stable than the surface stuff. So you're not gonna look after the first 3 days and say, well, this guy's got a great barrel rate, so he must be different now and is going to be like an MVP candidate this year. Like, probably not. Like, that stuff does take some time to stabilize, but the bat is doing all that math for you. It's looking at it. It's looking at how long it takes to stabilize. It's putting it into the projection. It's doing, most of the heavy lifting on all that kind of stuff.
Got a question in chat from Dane. Moneyball 16. Does the bat weigh previous seasons on different teams lower than previous years with the same team?
It doesn't, not explicitly. On the whole, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference. There are going to be exceptions. Obviously, a guy goes to a new team and, he goes to the Rays, and the Rays say, well, you'd be a much better pitcher if you just threw this kind of slider instead and did this with your, and it's like, and then he's like way better. Like, that happens. The bat's not trying to account for that yet. It will though adjust for the context the player has faced in the past. So like, if a guy was on the Rockies and he played his home games in Coors Field, it's not going to weight that less, but it is going to adjust his numbers to reflect what he would have done not in Coors Field, and it will use that.
Michael Townsend asks, when's there going to be an update to the lefty masher identification tool? You still have Albert Pujols with the Angels there, because you actually do have the bat lefty masher identification tool here.
Oh yeah, it's
you
there.
can open that up, and the lefty masher status for everyone is no. I'm giving it away for free. I'm sorry, CARTY, that I know the lefty masher identification tool is part of the Batx projection system, but if you want to download the CSV, you can just set up one yourself and just put the column at no. This is obviously a joke, because there is. Let me state this the best way possible, the more accurate way possible. There is such a thing as a lefty masher. There's just no way of identifying it.
Yeah, basically. The stats, the splits, like versus lefty splits, are so noisy, especially for right-handed batters, that you can't tell based on the actual data who's actually good and who isn't, and who's just getting lucky. Because we see guys all the time we've been doing this now, like 10 years. Over time, it's like Jordy Mercer's a lefty masher, Ryan Rayburn's a lefty masher,
Wilmer Flores
is a lefty masher.
Isn't McCann?
James McCann is a lefty masher. Right. And you look what happened. Okay, over a small sample, over 2 or 3 years, sure, they mashed lefties, and then guess what? The next 5 to 7 years, they stopped because it was just noise. Someone had to get lucky, and they were the guys that were, and then they stopped getting lucky.
So if you want to pay for the bat and just use this as a
handy reference
reminder that lefty matchers don't exist. Like that could be useful for you also, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Derek, people can find you in the bat Discord. You can get the bat at rotogrinders.com/the-bat. All the screens that I show up here, you get it all, right? You get all the projections pages. It's integrated into Lineup HQ. Obviously, if you have an RG subscription, obviously RG has our own projections here. I'm gonna ask you the tough question, since you're on RotoGrinders. Why are the RG projections just bad? and I should just use the bat, right?
No.
Because people ask that and go, it's like it seems weird that you're like, oh, you get a RotoGrinders subscription, you get all of our MLB stuff, and it's like, oh, if you want projections, you still have to pay CARTY for the bat. The RG projections are still extremely good.
Yeah, I mean, any projection is better than no projection. Like, if you're not using any projections yet, pick any single one, and that's going to be better than what you're doing now. If you want the best projections, I think that's the Batx.
And I think that the main difference between the RG projections and the bat projections is that the amount of, I'm not saying that the RG projections are simpler, but they take less stats into account. So it's not the StatCast data, not the pitch effects data. Like it's much more of a simpler process, which is still very accurate, but it's much more likely that your projections, even in football, take into account a lot of environmental stuff. You say, I mean, this is one thing that I always bug you with. That can we turn down cores a bit? Can you just turn the dial on a visiting team goes into cores and they don't price them up well enough? The bat is like jam them into every line. Go to your friend's house, find lineups and jam those guys into those lineups. And I'm like the RG projections have them high, but you have them obscenely high. And the thing is that I think that your projections are much more, especially in DFS, because they're mean projections, are much more geared towards, it's weird to say because a lot of people play cash games with your optimal lineups. They're a lot more geared towards GPPs. That, like, if the wind is blowing out at Wrigley at 25 miles an hour, the likelihood of this team putting up 15 runs is way higher. So all these means start going up, as opposed to other models, which may not weigh in as much. So, like, if the game does go off, you're more likely to get it right with the bat, right? The bat loved, but it also happens the other way where it's a Wrigley win game or a Coors game that BABIP sucks. There's a lot of ground balls, and you're just sitting there going, only 4 runs were scored. It's like, yeah, well, that's the variance of high wind in those conditions of, like, once people start getting on base and the wind's blowing out, like, this could be a game that's like 15-12. But if people are getting struck out and the ground balls are getting hit, the game could easily just be 3-1. But that variance is kind of accounted for in the bat more than other projection systems, very similar to the domes with the blitz.
Yeah. I think it's a good selling point is that, the bat is kind of considered the best, but it's not just going to give you like the consensus thought. Like, it's more than willing to go out on a limb and tell you something completely different than every other system is telling you, because it's accounting for a lot more things, because the methodology is so fundamentally different than most other systems out there. And so if you could have a system that is both really, really good and also different, like, that is like a gold mine for GPPs.
Especially with the cheap pitchers. I mean, to me, everyone that has used the bat for a long time knows that almost every day there's going to be someone in the Discord going, why is this garbage $6,300 price pitcher? Like, why? But like, what is? And more often than not, it works out. It's like you look and you go, this is not a comfortable click. But the guy puts up like 18 fantasy points, and you're like, oh, for 6,300, that was pretty good, right? And people are stacking against the guy, and you're like, oh, I don't know, right? Right? Drew Smiley, he comes out with an 8 strikeout game. I'm using the classic bad examples. Oh, it's a Drew Smiley day. Oh, great! It's a Patrick Corbin day. Can't wait to click on Patrick Corbin's name, because that can't go wrong, right?
Jason Vargas Day used to be fun 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, we're old school. That's old school stuff. Now Devin's even saying in the chat, with SimLabs, which I will be showing off SimLabs on Grinders Live. That's at 1:15 p.m. with Dean. So we do have SimLabs up for MLB in beta right now. I think you could use it for free today. If you could find how to get to it, go to SimLab/MLB, right? So in the URL, if you go to like SimLabs and go to NFL, just change the thing to MLB. I think they're going to fix that at some point. It'll be on the navigation. And I'll show this off. People have asked CARTY. They're like, I want to use SimLabs, but it's with the RG projections, not the BAT projections. Well, SimLabs integrates into Lineup HQ. So you can run SimLabs with the RG projections because that's what the SimLabs product is. It's all integrated. Then take those lineups, import them into Lineup HQ, and then switch your projection source to the BAT, and then do whatever you want with that from there. So, like, certain lineups project better in the like. What I would do is I'd run the Sims, right? Possibly, right? And you go with whatever field size, whatever you're doing. Even though it's with the RG projections, it's not like the RG projections are like drastically different. Like, it's not like I go to the RG projections and it's like, oh, the Reds are awful. The BAT loves the Reds, but the RG hates the Reds.
The Dodgers suck.
Right. It's right. It's never going to be that drastic. But then you take your 150 lineups or whatever, and maybe you're only playing 20. You take those 150 lineups, you go to Lineup HQ, you switch to the BAT projections, and you go, okay, let me weed out the worst projected lineups here. Let me, compare these lineups to the BAT, and then do whatever you want in Lineup HQ from there. So it's not just like if you use SimLabs, you can't possibly use the BAT. Like they can work hand in hand.
Yeah. And I am told eventually the BAT will work directly with SimLabs, which will be really nice. So
really?
I mean, I don't know a timeline yet, but I'm told it's going to happen, and I'm very excited about it.
Oh, I'm totally excited about it because then my MLB DFS process will go down to about like 75 seconds or something. I mean, it would be just stupid, right? Because it's already short as it is. Like I'll make 40 lineups today. I think I'm making 40 lineups today. I think I'll make them in 6 minutes or something. If you give me SimLabs BAT style, yeah, it's kind of a take a look, move some things around, press a button, cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and just upload. And I'm good. I'm done. I'm done. Right? DFS is so much different than it was 10 years, right? It's 2024. We've been around for almost 10 years, right? I'm 2015 when I started. Way different scene right now for DFS, where most of the questions are about how to run sims and optimizers and projections and everything like that. 2014, you'd be on shows and trying to explain, that just because a guy hit a home run yesterday doesn't mean he's going to hit a home run today. That's too big analysis.
Yeah, it's true.
Hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. Thank you, CARTY, for coming on early in the morning. You've been on other stuff. You wake up early enough. I typically say, people don't like waking up for my show here in the morning, but you're
I've been up.
So,
it's opening day. I was up early.
Yeah. How early were you up for opening day?
I was up at like 5 this morning.
What time did you go to sleep?
Probably close to midnight because I was working on some.
Okay, so you barely got any sleep. Oh, so you're running on like nothing. You're running. You gotta get a Red Bull or something. Okay, doke. So follow CARTY on Twitter, Derek CARTY, as well as in the Bat channel for Discord. Hit that thumbs up button, like I said. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. I'll be back in about an hour and 15 minutes with Dean for Grinders Live. We'll be talking about more about strategy about the actual slate, but obviously it's me and Dean, so maybe there'll be end up being some type of movie talk or something. Who knows where some of the things go? And then Crunch Time follows right after that. Rolf will be on with a weather report. We got Crunch Time for NBA later today, so we're still doing NBA stuff here. If you want to get a RotoGrinders combo premium subscription, obviously you get that in the description below. If you want a 6-month combo package, get $250 off. Just click on that link in the description. It's just right there. $250 off. And if you want to get the bat, rotogrinders.com/the-bat. Pick that up as well. And thanks, CARTY, for coming on. And I'll be back tomorrow with Mike Brown, H3 Buddha. We'll be talking MMA, the UFC slate coming up on Saturday. So check that out tomorrow as I talk about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.